Hey everyone, welcome to another wonderful stream. Today we're talking about what is going to happen in the housing market for the rest of 2024. We've got a couple great articles, a couple great videos for you today, and basically we're going to talk about some predictions that have come up regarding the housing market for the rest of this year. You know, when this year started, we thought, we're going to get 7 rate cuts, the interest rate's going to drop way down, and it could change the landscape of the market. A lot of people thought that the spring and summer of 2024 would be the bounce back period for the housing market because we were a little sluggish in 2022 and 23. However, that didn't quite pan out. So we're still in a bit of a tricky situation. As always, thanks for joining me on the stream. If you're new to the channel, please drop a like on the video. It really helps out the stream. And also subscribe to the channel. It's free and it helps the channel grow. So without further ado, we're getting to the first article. At any time, if you guys have any questions or comments about the article or about the real estate market in general, I'm happy to respond to them. Just go ahead, pop them into the comments below, and we will address them. I'd also like to know where you guys are watching from. So if you're watching from anywhere around the world, let me know what your local marketplace is and what you're seeing in your local real estate place. So let's jump right into it. We'll get this first article on the screen. All right, so our first article today comes from Forbes Advisors. Basically, it's just talking about housing market predictions for 2024. When will home prices be affordable again? Now, obviously, that's been the talk of the town really since about mid-2022 when interest rates really quickly shot up. When interest rates really quickly shot up, it really crushed affordability. But the Fed, who is in charge of setting the prime rate, they felt they had to do something to control inflation. Inflation has gotten a little bit more in check. However, it's still above where the Fed likes to see it at 2%. So those interest rate increases led to a lot of pressures, not only on buyers, mostly buyers, but also on sellers because we had the lock-in effect. And if you watched the stream last week, we talked all about the lock-in effect, what that means, how people feel locked in when they have a 3 or 4% interest rate or even lower than 3%, and how that basically locks them into their current house and doesn't allow them to move up and out to the next property. This article actually just came out a few days ago, back on July 11th, so it's fairly recent. And we'll just get into it. What many had hoped would be a rosy spring home buying season ended as a thorny challenge for many prospective home buyers already demoralized by a frustrating market. So again, we thought we might bounce back a little bit. We thought we were going to get several interest rate cuts, which would loosen things up a little bit, but that didn't happen. Yet, even as sales stalled amid elevated mortgage rates and home prices, one silver lining emerged. More resale inventory entered the market, which has begun to put some downward pressure on the pace of home price growth. And this is true. Just anecdotally, again, I'm a local real estate agent. I work in the Los Angeles County area. My hometown of Laverne and Claremont, we're about 45 minutes east of downtown LA, of course, depending on traffic. But we're in LA County, so we're a suburb of Los Angeles. And even just in my local marketplace, I have noticed a pop in inventory just in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And it actually feels like now on a weekly basis, we're getting, 5 to 10 homes on the market, which is amazing. There was a long stretch where we'd be lucky to get, like 3 or 2 homes on the market in a week. So that's going to alleviate things quite a bit. And of course, that trend has grown nationwide, most notably in areas like Florida and Texas, where inventory has really increased, which is going to reduce some of that crazy overbidding, some of the crazy price evaluations that we had seen in 2020 and 2021 and even into 2022. Other good news for home shoppers is the decline in the median price for a new home, now below the median resale home price, even as builders continuing offer incentives to lure buyers. So in this portion, they're talking about new home prices versus resale homes. So in case you're not aware, a new home is a brand new home, whereas a resale home is a home that's already been built and existing. Think of it like new cars versus used cars. Most transactions, most people do end up purchasing resale homes but it really comes down to your market. And the reason, and it'll talk about this a little bit later on in the article, and we have a video that goes over this too. I think one of the reasons that we're seeing the price of new homes decreasing is because new homes have been the hot trend in areas like Texas and Florida and Idaho. They saw a huge influx of buyers in, during those pandemic boom time period where like everybody was flocking to those markets because they were affordable. And so builders said, hey, people are coming here. Let's start cranking out homes. And they did, which was good. But now we might be reaching a point where they maybe cranked out a few too many. Now, does that mean there's going to be a crash in those areas? Maybe, maybe not. But it does mean that there might be some price relief in those areas. Again, the new home areas is really only going to affect areas of the nation where new homes are more popular than resale homes. And that tends to be your more rural areas and your up and coming areas in your bigger states with bigger land development use. Here in my area of California, there's not a lot of new builds. Every once in a while, you'll get a pocket of a new home building tract, but we're talking maybe 20 or 30 homes in a given city as opposed to, hundreds of homes in some of these areas in Texas and Florida. Nonetheless, experts say that the housing market will only see renewed momentum once mortgage rates drop enough to ease buyer affordability obstacles and incentivize homeowners locked in at low interest rates to move. Again, if interest rates do go down, that will basically it has the potential to bring affordability down as well. But remember, typically when interest rates go down, home prices go up. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Housing market forecast for 2024. Experts insist the housing market will improve despite high mortgage rates, out-of-reach home prices, and sluggish sales transactions amid dampening demand. And I have to actually tend to agree with the experts. Even though we're getting a little bit more inventory, even if mortgage rates do go down, even as home prices go up, although they're not going up as nearly as aggressively as we saw in the previous couple of years. At the end of the day, we still have a really, really basic supply and demand issue, especially in my area that I work and live in, which again is Southern California. Unfortunately, home buyers continue to see a delay in the yearn for transformation thanks to several ongoing headwinds. One is inflation taking its sweet time cooling off, further delaying the Federal Reserve from cutting the federal funds rate. And again, that target inflation rate of 2%, it's hard to get to. And as we've heard, inflation is really, really sticky, this idea of sticky inflation. And basically that means that, despite what the Fed does, moving interest rates up, holding interest rates higher for longer, inflation just won't tamp down. However, it's important to note that, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, again, as one of the primary costs in a consumer's day-to-day life is their housing, whether that's rent or their mortgage. It doesn't make a difference. And one of the things that's keeping the inflation high is high cost of housing. And then you think, okay, well, the reason the cost of housing is high is partly due to interest rates being high. So we have this negative feedback loop where inflation is high because housing is high, and because the inflation is high, interest rates stay high. But that means that housing stays less affordable. So it's this kind of ugly cycle that we're locked into a little bit, but other signs of inflation have improved. In fact, prices of some consumer goods have actually gone down in the last few weeks and into the last month. So those are good signs, but nonetheless, we're not seeing that huge relief that we need. Nonetheless, the Fed still says that we might get an interest rate cut here in September, which could help the home buyers out there. Mortgage rates indirectly track this benchmark interest rate banks use as a guide for overnight lending. That's the federal funds rate. Again, the federal funds rate is not the same as the mortgage interest rate. However, those two are tied together and they typically move in lockstep. So if the federal funds rate goes up, the mortgage interest rate goes up, and vice versa. Consequently, the federal funds rate at its highest level in over 2 decades, mortgage rates and borrowers are feeling the added impact on their ability to afford a home. Keep in mind, a lot of the buyer's money is going to pay interest. Even when that mortgage rate fluctuates by 0.5% or 1%, it can make a huge difference on your monthly payment as a home buyer. Meanwhile, U.S. home prices remain unaffected by persistently high mortgage rates, posting an annual 6.3% gain in April, according to the latest S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller Home Price Index. Even as this annual gain marked a slowdown from 6.5% in March, the index still broke the previous month's record high. So there's a little bit to unpack in these couple sentences. So meanwhile, U.S. home prices remain unaffected by persistently high mortgage rates, posting an annual 6.3% gain in April. So even though mortgage rates are high, we're still seeing an annual gain of 6.3% in home pricing, which is quite a bit. If you look at any type of, long-term graph going back, I think we really started tracking this in about the 1930s. This annual appreciation of home price growth is usually around 3 or 4%. So 6.3% is a good amount above what we would typically expect to see. And it's a really good amount of appreciation given the tough interest rates that buyers are facing. Again, remember, typically when interest rates go up, prices are supposed to come down, but that did not happen and that's still not happening. So again, we're still in this really kind of weird spot in the market where we have high interest rates, but we're also seeing values stay on the high side and they're not receding. The S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller Home Price Index, that's like the gold standard for the charting of the average prices in real estate in the United States. So that's an extremely reliable figure that's been looked at for many, many years. Even though April was down a little bit from March, we're looking at 6.3 and 6.5% respective gains for each of those annual month-over-month numbers, which is quite a bit. Many experts expect a Fed rate cut will help stimulate the housing market, but it remains unclear when and if even a single cut will occur in 2024. Now, Jerome Powell had made some remarks. Jerome Powell, by the way, is the chair of the Fed. The Fed is the group of economists, bankers, money guys, and money women that basically decide on financial policy for the United States, mostly relating to that federal funds rate, which that overnight lending rate. And Jerome Powell, who, when he talks, people listen, especially investors in the stock market. But he's made some remarks that he understands that high interest rates are causing a burden on home buyers. And he understands that while maybe inflation is not right where they want to see it, he knows that by keeping interest rates higher for longer could actually start to harm the economy. So he hasn't come out and said, don't worry, I'm going to lower interest rates, but he has kind of dropped some tidbits that convey to the market, lenders, stock investors that, hey, I understand that high rates could be a problem. So maybe we will get an interest rate cut. Of course, we don't know for sure. When will the housing market finally recover in 2024? This is kind of interesting. When I first read this article and it said, when will the housing market finally recover in 24? That operative word there is like recover. Like, what does recover mean? Back in 2008 to 2012, recovery meant, values to go up. I think in this sense, they're kind of talking about, will the housing market finally become more affordable in 2024? Maybe would have been the better headline. Because depending on who you are, the housing market is not hurting. If you own a home or own property, well, the housing market doesn't need to recover. It's doing great. If you are a home buyer looking to purchase, well, then perhaps you are looking for the housing market to recover a little bit. For a housing recovery to occur, several conditions must unfold. For the best possible outcome, we'd first need to see inventories of homes for sale turn considerably higher, says Keith Gumbinger, vice president at online mortgage company HSH.com. We've talked a ton about inventory, and we're going to get a little bit into that as we go along in the article. But essentially, inventory is how many houses we have to sell. The higher the inventory, the more homes on the market, which is basically supply. So inventory equals supply. And I'll tell you what, if you're a home buyer out there and you're watching this, you are rooting for supply to increase so that hopefully prices will decrease, because it's a basic supply and demand sort of a relationship. This additional inventory in turn would ease the upward pressure on home prices, leveling them off or perhaps helping them to settle back somewhat from peak or near peak levels, which again, if you're a home buyer, that's something that you're hoping for. Of course, mortgage rates would need to cool off, which seems promising given the recent declines. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate trended down over the course of June and into July, coming in at 6.89% for the week ending July 11th. So we have seen some improvements in the interest rate. We're at 6.89%, which historically over the time that we've been tracking interest rates, that is still historically very, very low. The average is around 10 or 11 or even 12%, if my memory serves me correct. I'm sure someone in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong. But in recent history, from about the year 2000 onward, 6.89% is relatively high. And that is one reason home buyers are balking at the idea of purchasing a home, because basically they're waiting for that interest rate to go down. However, again, we've talked about this before. And if you are a prospective home buyer, if you're sitting on the fence of, do I buy now? Do I not buy now? There's two things that you can remember. Number one, you need to buy a home when it's right for you. Don't forget about timing the market. If it's a good time for you to buy a home, if you can afford the down payment, if your job if your job outlook is strong and stable, you've got a good job. If you're buying a home with a partner, whether that's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, heck, even a business partner or family member or friend, make sure that relationship is strong and good. And if all those things check out and you find a home that you like, you absolutely should buy it. But that's not to say that this is a great time for everybody to buy a home. That would be a foolish statement. The other thing that goes along with that is it's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. So again, you don't want to wait for those rates to go down and think, oh, I'm just going to wait another year and interest rates are going to go down. Well, that's not necessarily the case. So at the end of the day, maybe it's not a good time for you to buy a home. Maybe it is. Only you can evaluate that decision for yourself in your specific situation and in your specific market. However, when mortgage rates finally go on the descent, Gumbinger says, don't hope they cool too quickly. Rapidly falling rates could create a surge of demand that wipes away any inventory gains, causing home prices to rebound. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about it could be a very double-edged sword if interest rates do go down, especially quickly. Because if interest rates go down very quickly, we're going to see a lot of those on the fence buyers and possibly investors say, hey, money is cheaper now. I can afford more house. It's time to buy. And even if we have a pop in inventory, we could still see prices go up because homes become a little bit more affordable. So that's a very, very real possibility. Better that rate reductions happen at a metered pace, incrementally improving buyer opportunities over a stretch of time rather than all at once, Gumbinger says, which I absolutely agree with. He adds that mortgage rates returning to a more normal upper 4% to lower 5% range would also help the housing market over time return to 2014 to 2019 levels. Yet Gumbinger predicts it could be a while before we return to those rates. And again, I agree. I don't think we're going to see 4 or 5% anytime soon. If we did see any interest rate that starts with a 5, so even 5.99%, I do think that would loosen the market up quite a bit. And the reason that it could help the housing market over time return to those 2014 and 2019 levels is because if we do see upper 4% or lower 5%, upper 4% or even into the upper 5% range, what that's going to do is that's going to ease some of the pressure and feeling of that lock-in effect, which we've talked about. So what is kind of theoretically could happen is that home buyers with a 3% or 3.5% rate who've been, in their home for, at least 5, if not 10 years to go, hey, since I bought this house, we've had a couple of kids, or the kids have grown up, or maybe the kids have moved out, or something has happened where it's like, hey, we would really like to either move to a larger home or to a smaller home, but we don't want to give up our 3.5% rate to go to a 7% rate. Well, all of a sudden, if those people could go to a 5.5 or 5.75% rate, all of a sudden they might go, you know what? Yeah, we're going to pay a little bit more, but we've had so much equity increase in this house. We're going to have great financial profit in this house. We're willing to take that slightly higher rate because we want a bigger home, a smaller home, a home in a different area of town or a different part of the United States. So NAR to implement settlement agreement changes in August. So this is something that's been all over the news. Following years of litigation, the NAR, National Association of Realtors, has agreed to pay $418 million to settle a series of high-profile antitrust lawsuits filed in 2019 on behalf of home sellers. The settlement received preliminary court approval in April. A judge is expected to grant final approval in November. Meanwhile, NAR announced the new required practices will go into effect on August 17th. The required new rules prohibit broker compensation offers on multiple listing services, or the MLS, the private databases that allow local real estate brokers to publish and share information about residential property listings. One thing that I've heard a lot about the settlement in the news, a lot of consumers think, oh, that means that we don't have to pay agents anymore. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that you can't display that offer of compensation in the MLS. However, it could still be displayed a myriad of other ways, including private websites, private databases, flyers, brochures, marketing materials, things like that. Moreover, sellers will no longer be responsible for paying the buyer broker commissions, upending an accepted practice that has been in place for years. And real estate agents participating in the MLS must establish written representation agreement with buyers. This is a very important sentence, a little bit to unpack here. So this is a really big myth that the news loves to run with. Sellers will no longer be responsible for paying buyer broker commissions. It's never been required. And this is just incorrect. This is not good fact checking on whoever wrote this article. Has it been a customary practice? Yes, but commissions have always been negotiable, and sellers have never been required to offer a buyer's agent commission. Now, are sellers required to offer a buyer's agent commission if they want their property in the MLS? Yes. However, sellers have always had the opportunity and the chance to offer as little as $1 out. So this idea that sellers have been responsible for being required to pay buyer's agent commissions, that is incorrect completely. Additionally, I think that there's going to be a lot of good that comes from this that could shape the market a little bit differently. Real estate agents participating in the MLS must establish written representation agreement with buyers. That means that now agents working with buyers have to have a contract with that buyer that outlines the duties of the agents, what that agent is responsible for performing over the course of their entire relationship of looking for homes, getting under contract, working through escrow, and closing, which is probably how it should be. I mean, now as a real estate agent, when I list a home for a client, before the property goes on the market, we have a contract that says the terms of the deal, what I'm going to do to sell the home, and many other details that go into that. So a lot of this really isn't anything new, but the news loves to take a story and run with it. Housing inventory forecast. When will there be sufficient supply to reduce prices? And this is a pretty hot topic. Despite more resale homes entering the market, the inventory shortage remains severe and likely will for some time, thanks to multiple headwinds. For one, many homeowners remain locked in at ultra-low mortgage rates, unwilling to exchange for a higher rate in a high-priced housing market. Consequently, demand continues to outpace housing supply and likely will for a while. So again, talking about this, this lock-in effect, it's very real. It's affecting home sellers and therefore it's affecting home buyers. I don't expect to see a meaningful increase in supply of existing homes for sale until mortgage rates are back down in the low 5% range. So probably not in 2024, says Ricky Sharga, founder and CEO of CJ Patrick Company, a market intelligence and business advisory firm. I don't think it needs to be in the low 5% range. I even think mid to high fives would be very, very helpful. But I do agree it's not going to be in 2024. We'll be lucky to see rates hit 6.4% in 2024. I think 6.5% is possible. 6.6 is more likely. I do think we are going to get one rate cut. I do think so. I don't know if it's the correct thing to do, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Fed doesn't cut rates, but I think we're going to get one. New home construction has provided some relief, but not enough to fill the inventory gap meaningfully. And again, that's because we've been so low on housing inventory. And there's a really, really good chart in one of the videos that we're going to go over just after this article that will show that. So you're definitely going to want to stick around, and you're going to want to see that information on that little video clip. The US remains 4.5 million homes short, up from 4.3 million a year ago, according to Zillow analysis. Entry-level supply is particularly dire, contributing to an ongoing cycle of propped up demand and inflated prices. And that's absolutely true. So we are building homes, but the homes that home builders are building are not really starter homes or affordable homes. And it really comes down to, unfortunately, a term that I friggin' hate so much, but it doesn't pencil out for builders because the land costs no matter how big of a home you're building. So let's say you have a 5,000 square foot plot of land. It's going to cost you negligibly more money to build a 2,500 square foot home than it is to build an 1,100 square foot home. And the builder can build a 2,500 square foot home and sell it for a decent amount more than that 1,100 square foot home. So the problem is that we're seeing is that essentially builders don't really have any incentive to sell or build smaller homes. They don't have it. Why build and sell a smaller home when you can pay just a little bit more money, build a larger home, and mark it up a lot more? So here's a graph. I'm going to actually make this a little bit smaller so you guys can see. So this is throughout the United States, typical U.S. home values by state. The darker the blue, the higher the value, the lighter the blue, the lighter the value. So in California, average is 806. Obviously, it's the highest in the country. It always is, other than Hawaii, which is a staggering 988,000 in terms of average value today. So kind of a fun interactive map to mess around with, where you can see, Kansas, talk about affordability, 230,000. But again, even if you look at that, 230,000 today, but just 5 years ago, it was 153,000. So still huge increases, even in some of the most affordable states in the nation. Iowa, for example, 225, one of the most affordable states, but it was just 163,000 just 5 years ago. And again, over here, West Virginia, 167,000 now, but just 120,000 5 years ago. Home builder sentiment dips. Builder sentiment continues to wilt with the summer heat. High mortgage rates and sticky inflation are largely to blame for the dampened outlook for new construction, with builder confidence sliding from 45 to 43 in May, according to the most recent National Association of Home Builders / Wells Fargo Housing Market Index. This is the second consecutive month of downward movement and negative sentiment. So builder sentiment basically says that builders are losing confidence that there are people out there that are willing to buy new homes. And if builders sentiment is low, that means they're going to stop building or build at a lower rate. And then we could still face some of these, supply constraints. But keep in mind, new home builds are particular to areas of the country. So it doesn't mean that that inventory issue could happen everywhere. A reading of 50 or above means more builders see good conditions ahead for new construction. So we're at 43 right now, which is not terrible, but it's also not great. We'd like that number to be above 50. Meanwhile, the construction of new homes, which had been on a tear, helping to fill the hole left by scant resale inventory, has slowed. This is a major indicator for a lot of people that really focus and concentrate on the housing market, housing statistics, and housing numbers. That the permits and that basically indicates the willingness of home builders to continue home building. It's basically a way to look forward down the pike and kind of predict the future. If permit inquiries are up, then we know new home builds are going to go up. Permits for new single-family homes fell to their lowest seasonally adjusted annual rate since June of 2023, amid builder blahs, dipping 2.9% month over month in May, according to the latest data from U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Housing starts were down 5.2%, and completions slid 8.5%. Basically, all this means that home builders aren't building as many homes as they were in previous months. However, there's a silver lining for hopeful buyers. 25% of builders slashed prices in May to boost sales, and more were open to offering incentives. So we can see that builders, although inventory is still low, builders are building home prices at a pace that still would allow them to offer some incentives and discounts and cut prices for new home buyers. Residential real estate stats, existing, new, and pending home sales. Current and anticipated home sales transactions fizzled across the board in May thanks to scorching high mortgage rates. Here's what the latest home sales data has to say. Now, keep in mind, home sales data is always delayed. It's delayed at least 1 month, and usually meaningful data is delayed 6 to 8 weeks. So just keep that in mind whenever you read any housing data. Existing home sales dipped 0.7% in May, according to the latest report from NAR, marking the third straight month of declines as ascending mortgage rates and home prices deterred potential buyers. In May 2023, home buyers could get a mortgage rate well over 0.5% lower at a time when homes were also more affordable. Sales also fell 2.8% compared to May of last year. Experts believe that home sales activity will perk up once inflation eases and the Fed finally starts to cut interest rates, which is a general consensus that probably will happen. Nonetheless, many prospective buyers, particularly first-time and lower-income home shoppers, will likely be left out in the cold, with the median price for an existing home in May soaring 5.8% from a year ago to a new record high of $419,300. And again, kind of goes with what we talked about just a bit ago about how home builders just are not building starter homes. And, you know, in your area, that starter home price, it's going to vary. In my area, really any home under like 600,000 or 700,000 just flies off the shelf because it's still relatively affordable for people. And, you know, the homes in the more middle to high tier, your 900s, million one, they do still sell relatively quickly, but not with the veracity that some of the more affordable homes have. Home prices reaching new highs are creating a wider divide between those owning properties and those who wish to be first-time buyers, said Lawrence Yoon, chief economist at NAR, in the report. The mortgage payment for a typical home today is more than double that of a home's purchased before 2020. I'm going to read that one more time. The mortgage payment for a typical home today is more than double that of home purchased before 2020. So in 4 years, the mortgage payment on a typical home has doubled in just 4 years. That's pretty remarkable, and maybe not in a good way. One upside to fewer sales is that resale inventory has been loosening since December. The latest NAR data shows inventory growing 6.7% month over month, logging 1.28 million unsold homes at the end of March. Still, only 3.7 months of inventory remain at the current monthly sales pace. Most experts consider a balanced market to be between 4 and 6 months. Now, I will say that a more balanced market is usually in the 5 to 6 months range, but any increase is better for buyers. Still we're tight on inventory, and that's going to continue, that upward pressure on pricing. So again, this is hyper local. Real estate is always a really, really local subject. Again, what I'm talking about here in the suburbs of Los Angeles might not apply to you in a rural area of Arkansas. It just won't apply. But still, as a whole, we're still seeing that there is an inventory crunch. New home sales. Meanwhile, new home sales are also not invulnerable to high mortgage rates despite their shiny appeal. Amid mortgage rates hovering close to or above 7%, May sales of newly constructed single-family houses plunged 11.7%, 4.7% compared to April, and 16.5% from a year ago, according to the latest U.S. Census Bureau and HUD data. The good news for prospective home buyers is that the slow pace of new home sales puts new home inventory at a level not seen since early 2008, according to Lisa Stewart-Avant, chief economist at Bright MLS. Buyers that remain in the market are starting to have more leverage, and sellers of existing homes are increasingly offering concessions, including help with closing costs and money toward repairs. Moreover, those shopping for new construction will be happy to hear that the median price for a new home in May fell $500 to $417,400, nearly $2,000 below the median existing price. So good news, your new home price, your new home just got $500 cheaper. So congratulations. Here's a really good chart that kind of shows some of the difference. I'll make this a little bit smaller so we can see. So as you can see, this is new home median price, existing home median price, new versus existing, and the percentage difference. So in February, $37,000 price difference, new homes more expensive. In March, $44,000, and then in April, just $11,000. And now new homes are actually $1,900 cheaper on average compared to the resale homes. Pending home sales. Don't expect home sales numbers to heat up much as we move through summer. NAR's pending home sales index dipped 2.1% in May. This reading comes on the heels of a dismal April when the index plummeted 7.7%. Mortgage rates remained above 7% over much of those 2 months. Year-over-year pending transactions also took a nosedive in May, sinking 6.6%. A pending home sale marks the point in the purchase transaction when the buyer and seller agree on a price and terms and is considered a leading indicator of closed existing home sale within the next 1 to 2 months. So basically when a property opens escrow, it is considered to be pending sale. With a 7.8% index reading, the pending sales pace remains at a 4-year low, or the weakest since the earliest days of the pandemic. However, despite home prices continuing to break records, experts expect loosening inventory and evidence of a slowing economy to soon provide at least some relief for home shoppers. With mortgage rates falling below 7% once again in June, frozen buy activity may start to thaw in the second half of the summer, said Hannah Jones, senior economic research analyst at Realtor.com, in an emailed statement. Spring home shoppers face chilly affordability challenges. Will summer be better? Well, we know that summer hasn't been too much better. Spring home buying season never sprung thanks to persistently high housing costs, keeping frustrated shoppers on the sidelines. In the week ending May 30th, when mortgage rates were 7.03%, borrowers who put down 20% down on a $419,300 median price resale home with a 30-year mortgage had to shell out a monthly mortgage payment of $2,238, and that's not including property taxes or insurance, which is crazy. By comparison, someone who purchased a resale home a year ago when the median price was just $396,000 at 6.5%, they were paying $2,019, $219 less per month. So in just a year, we're talking about over $200 a month in increased pricing, not including taxes and insurance, which is quite a bit. So when will hopeful home buyers expect to get some relief? Despite the typical first-time home buyer can only afford 29% of homes for sale nationwide, according to the First-Time Home Buyer Outlook report published by First American Financial Corp. Deputy Chief Economist Odetta Kushi says there is a light at the end of the tunnel due to anticipated slower home price growth and mortgage rates. So they have some tips here. Get pre-approved, know your budget, be flexible about size and location, keep an eye on the market where you buy. Don't be discouraged. A really, really important one. Again, it's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. It might not always be a good time to buy a home, but if a home becomes available that you like and that you can afford, it is a good time to start building equity. Always get pre-approved with a strong and reputable lender as soon as possible. Getting pre-approved will give you a much clearer understanding of your budget and what you can afford. It shows sellers that you're a qualified buyer, and strengthens your offer. This is absolutely a great tip. You definitely should get pre-approved. It doesn't cost any money. It only takes a little bit of time. It will really give you a clear idea of what your budget is. It will also give you a clear idea of what your monthly payment will be. Plus, it's basically a requirement for making an offer on a home. So tips for selling. This is your basic stuff. Research comparable home sales. Make sure your home is in top-notch shape. Work with a local real estate agent. That's a huge benefit, a local agent. And if you need a local agent, again, I'm in the greater Los Angeles area, but I understand you might be watching this from anywhere in the world. If you're thinking about selling your home, I have a huge network of real estate agents that I work with. And if you need help finding a good, competent local real estate agent that's going to do a good job for you, drop a comment, send me an email. I'll be happy to put you in touch with an agent local in your area. So the big question, will the housing market crash in 2024? This is the $1 million, well, perhaps now in this day and age, perhaps the $1 billion question. As already high home prices continue trending upward, you may be concerned that we're in a bubble ready to pop. However, the likelihood of a housing market crash, a rapid drop in unsustainably high home prices due to waning demand, remains low for 2024. Sorry, everybody out there rooting for a housing crash. The record low supply of houses on the market protects against a market crash, says Tom Hutchins, Executive Vice President of Production at Angel Oak Mortgage Solutions, a non-QM lender. Moreover, experts point out that today's homeowners stand on much more secure footing than those coming out of the financial crisis, with many borrowers having substantial home equity. In 2024, I expect we'll see home appreciation take a step back, but not plummet, says Ofri, senior macroeconomist at Zillow Home Loans. This outlook aligns with what other housing market watchers expect. Comerica forecasts the national house prices will rise 2.9% in 2024, which is certainly not a crash. The economist at Zillow also notes that several factors, including millennials entering their prime home buying years, wage growth, and financial wealth, are tailwinds that will sustain housing demand in 2024. As millennials get older, as they continue to make more money, their ability to kind of absorb these higher interest rates and higher prices will increase. Even so, with fewer homes selling, Dan, we got some tough names in this article, but this Dan guy, co-founder and CEO of New Homes Mate, a marketplace for new construction homes, sees a price collapse within the realm of possibility, especially in markets where real estate investors scooped up numerous properties. If something pushes that over the edge, the consequences could be severe, which could be markets like we talked about 2 streams ago in Florida and in Texas, where there was a lot of investors buying up a lot of homes and a lot of new homes being built. Will foreclosures increase in 2024? Lenders began foreclosures on 22,385 properties nationwide in May, up 3% from previous month, but down 4% from a year ago, according to real estate data firm Adam, which is a very reputable data firm. Meanwhile, completed foreclosures dipped slightly compared to the previous month, with real estate owned properties, or REOs, declining by 1%. So they're actually going down. So this wave of foreclosures, which, I mean, I heard about that being talked about way back in the days of the pandemic, which now feels like so long ago. But a lot of the crash bros is a slang term for all these people, especially YouTubers and social media influencers, that are just absolutely convinced there's going to be a real estate crash, a huge crash. These crash bros would say, oh, well, once mortgage forbearance ends, there's going to be a huge amount of foreclosures and we're going to have a huge inventory and there's going to be a crash. Well, that didn't happen. And then when inflation went up and interest rates went up, it's because, oh, people aren't going to be able to afford rates if they need money out of their house, they're going to have to refi to a higher rate. Then they're not going to be able to afford the payment. And there's going to be a huge wave of foreclosures. That didn't happen either. And then the next thing that came up was, oh, well, all these baby boomers that are old, they're going to give up their big homes and they're going to have to find other homes, and that's going to cause foreclosures. Well, that didn't happen either. So And the latest data shows that foreclosures are actually going down. So foreclosure activity continues to lag behind pre-pandemic levels and is still about 70% of 2019 numbers, says Sharga. So it's still even below before the pandemic and like 30% below. Sharga explains that a significant factor contributing to today's comparatively low levels of foreclosure activity is that homeowners, including those in foreclosures, possess an unprecedented amount of home equity. So homeowners have a lot of equity. When you have a lot of equity, it's very difficult to foreclose on, because if you can't afford the home any longer, you can always just sell the house and actually make a profit. So when will be the best time to buy a home in 2024? Well, basically this whole thing says nobody knows. And the best time to buy a house is when you can afford it. Generally, we see home prices rising. So you don't want to wait too long, but at the same time, you don't want to jump into buying a home if you can't afford it. You don't want to be house poor. You don't want to overpay. And you don't want to live above your means. So don't just buy a home to buy one. You need to be comfortable in your economic and social situation in order to take that very big commitment on. So at this time, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look now at this video. It's a short video from Fox, and basically it talks about this expert is predicting a grim fate for housing market if rates go down. So let's see what this segment from Fox News has to say. I'm going to take this banner off your screen so that you can see everything. Here we go.
All right. In the meantime, I do want to get the impact right now we're seeing in real estate rates and market rates, mortgage rates, because of the backup we've seen in some of these other rates, like the 10-year note. Now, there's a little bit of a delay effect with the backup in that and what's happening on the 30-year fixed rate front. It did move to around 6.88%. Others argue with the backup we've seen, it will be well.
So just keep in mind, this is as of April 11th. So this video is a couple months old, but for all intents and purposes, the theory will still remain.
Well over 7%. Bill Pulte Capital CEO, his thoughts on that. What do you think, Bill?
I think that inflation's here to stay, Neil. I think you're going to have mortgage rates are going to be high. And I think that housing prices are going to continue to go up. Neil, if what President Biden said yesterday, he said that there might be a tax cut, not a tax cut, a rate cut this year. If that happens, Neil, I think you could see housing prices go even higher.
And that's what we've been talking about, right? It's like if rate cuts are good and they might alleviate some of the affordability problem, but also they could stoke the demand. And remember, when demand goes up, if supply does not go up at the same rate, then prices will go up. And it's really, really hard to increase supply in the housing market. You can't just crank out more like it's an iPhone or even a car. It's hard to build homes, it's expensive, and it takes time. So again, if interest rates drop, we could see prices go up.
By that argument, I think that a rate cut, whatever people think of the justification of that, it could be a little inflationary here. But what do you make of it?
It could be very inflationary. And the problem...
It could be inflationary because it could drive up pricing, which is why the Fed is being extra cautious. And they haven't committed to raising rates, and they haven't done it previously because it could actually fan the flames of greater price inflation in the real estate market because, well, now the homes appear more affordable.
The problem is if you don't own a home and you don't own a home right now, you're going to have a two-pronged problem. Number one, you're going to have inflation, which means that just by time going by, the inflation, the cost of the house will go up. The other thing is, if the Federal Reserve comes in and, let's say, helps out a politician before an election and reduces rates, even with a high inflation print, you could see those home prices go up, in my opinion, 5, 10, 20%.
If home prices went up even 5%, but heaven forbid 10 or 20%, it's going to cause a real problem for, again, those first-time buyers. People that own homes that are moving up, well, if the price of their next home, if the price of homes goes up 10%, you think, oh, wow, I'm going to have to pay 10% more. Well, not really, because the home that you're selling is going to sell for 10% more. So who it really hurts are the people that don't own, those first-time buyers looking to find something affordable, reasonable, realistic. It's going to hurt them the most.
That would be just insane, Neil. You would start to have a buying frenzy again, much like during COVID. So I think right now the good thing is that mortgage rates are high, But if they lower those rates, those prices could skyrocket again.
Indeed, a lot depends on those rates, to your point, Bill. And I caught up with Barbara Corcoran on this very subject, and what she says are some of the seminal inflection points she's looking for real estate in general. Here's what she said on the matter. This is from Barbara Corcoran.
If rates go down just another percentage point, that's what I'm hoping for by year, and prices are going to go through the roof. And the reason for that
would be around 6%, get to that level.
She's correct. They would go through. I don't think they're going to go down 1%. I don't think they're going to go to 6. I just don't see it happening before the end of the year. Now, again, if you take a look in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you can see that this was as of March 27th. So this was some time ago. Obviously, we've gone forward 4 months. At this time, rate cuts were still possible. Now we know, where we're now, probably not as likely.
Because everyone will come out and buy. There are probably 10 buyers on the sidelines waiting for interest rates to come down that are actually active in the market. So everybody's going to charge the market.
All right, and she's saying if they come down a point, at that time that would have brought us to around, the 6% level from around the 7% level we were at. That might be a tall task now. What do you think?
She's exactly right. She literally said almost what I'm saying. And I think that, yes, if you had 1% decrease in rates, that thing is going to go so high. And Neil, we talk about affordability, and I talk to you all the time about zoning. The big problem in the country is there's so many regulations around zoning and around putting new home developments. So what's going to happen, Neil?
Yep, and that's one reason why it's hard to build homes. Like I said, you can't just put up more homes. You can't just make more homes because there's a process. Now, we've seen some states, especially here in my state of California, state has passed laws that essentially make it much easier for home builders to build homes. And now what they're doing is they're taking away the local process. So before, you had to get local politicians involved, you had to get local cities to sign off, local residents of the city had to approve the project. Now, basically what they're saying is if this project meets the building code, the basic building code, you can't stop it, which is good for housing and trying to alleviate the crisis. But there's also a side effect of that it changes neighborhoods quite a bit. It can alter the complexion of the neighborhoods, especially when you're talking about putting in high density properties, 3, 4, 5, 6-story buildings in a neighborhood that doesn't have high density. And people typically don't like that. Now, is it good? Is it bad? Is it right or is it wrong? Well, that's not for me to decide.
I predict if rates go down, housing prices will go through the roof. And then what you're going to happen is you're going to have a flood of people trying to get into this stuff. And it's going to be a big problem. And you're going to see it everywhere. We've seen a little bit of inventories pick up across the United States, Neil, because of these mortgage rates going up. But if they lower those rates, you could say bye to those inventories again.
All right. Well, watch closely. Bill Pulte, thank you very much.
So that one was interesting. And then this video from CNBC, which is just 7 days ago, talks a little bit about supply and demand. This one I thought was really, really good and kind of relates to where we're at and where we might be headed in the housing market moving forward.
Housing industry watchers have been thinking that home prices will ease in the second half of the year, but so far it hasn't been the case, even as the supply of homes on the market finally increases. Diana Olick joins us to explain why. Diana, good morning.
Well, good morning, Joe. Yeah, we're in a housing market now unlike any other, and that's due to economic forces unlike any other. The foreclosure crisis, the Great Recession, the pandemic, and the unprecedented quick cut and then quick spike in mortgage.
If I hear the word unprecedented one more time, that's got to be I don't know if there was a ticker or a counter somewhere that's how many times unprecedented has been used in the media since 2020. I would love to see it. I'm just a quick little sidebar. It's my quick little rant. I'm so sick of that word.
Rates. So take a look at supply of both newly built and existing homes together for sale. It shot up during the 2005 housing boom.
This graph right here is a great reason, a great visual demonstration on why we're not going to experience a major housing crash. Allow me, if you will. So this was pre-market crash, pre-crash run up. And then here we are in 2006, 7, and 8, huge supply boost, which led to crashing home prices. Then we had the foreclosure wave, which shot up inventory. And then we slowly worked our way down until we got very low. And then we just, if you look over these few years, this is each one of these is probably about a year's here. So in these years, the downward trend here, look at this downward trend. That is not good until we get all the way down here. Look, it's so low in terms of month supply. And this is where we're at now, about 3.5 months supply. You can see that during the pandemic era, during the great financial crisis and meltdown, we had over 12 months. And I think at the high was 13 months of inventory. This is a great demonstration on why we're not going to have a huge housing crash, at least a nationwide housing crash. Might some areas of the United States have significant price reductions? Yeah, that's definitely possible. But as a nation as a whole, it's not prices aren't going to come down.
Boom and the ensuing foreclosure crisis, which of course flooded the market with homes. So home building essentially ground to a halt. By 2012, new homes were just 6% of all supply. Then total supply dropped even more in the pandemic when demand spiked in those first 2 years. Now it's finally climbing back slowly, but in a weird kind of twist, it's mostly newly built homes. The month supply of new homes for—
Keep in mind, newly built homes are not evenly distributed throughout the United States. Newly built homes are more common in areas with a lot of open land and space. So your major cities, your major metropolitan areas are going to have a very, very low number of new built homes. So again, that's why this is going to favor your more open states, your more land abundant states and areas, places like Texas and Florida. So while month supply of new homes has shot up, that doesn't necessarily mean that overall inventory has shot up. And it doesn't mean inventory across the United States has shot up, but perhaps just inventory in a couple of localized spots.
For sale is now almost 3 times that of existing homes. Month supply is how long it would take to sell that supply at the current sales pace. Now, new and old home month supply usually track pretty closely, but not so much now. Now, new construction, it's making up 30% of total inventory. And this, of course, is due to roller coaster mortgage rates dropping to historic lows at the start of the pandemic and then spiking to 20-year highs just 2 years later. That makes homeowners who wanted to move up instead stay put.
Lock-in effect. That's exactly what she's talking about right now with lock-in effect. So the resale homes aren't coming onto the market, which further spurs new home builders to build more because they know buyers don't really have an option for existing resale homes, but the demand is still there.
Cutting existing supply further, and it makes buyers look for cheaper homes. So you can see that in the month supply of homes for sale in May by price tier.
And this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, where, again, this is back in May 2024, so a couple months old. But, if you look 4.2, it's $1 million plus homes. This chart needs to be opposite. We need to flip this. We need to have 4.2 months supply of 100 to 250,000 homes, and then obviously the rest being opposite. And this is part of the problem, is that there's expensive homes to buy, but there's not affordable homes to buy. This is something that I'm seeing in my area. Again, like I said, in my area, starter homes 600,000 or less, they're flying off the shelves. What are you seeing in your area? Are starter homes still flying off the shelf? What's the price of a starter home in your local market? I'd love to know. Drop a comment. Let me know what a starter home in your area looks like.
It is the lowest in the $100,000 to $500,000 price range because that's where most demand now lives. And that is despite the fact that supply has increased the most in those lower tiers. The homes are just getting eaten up that fast. Yep. And that, Joe, is why prices just keep going up.
So what does that, which home builders would we buy then? We should buy the ones that can make houses between $100,000 and $500,000. You don't want to buy the luxury or premium house builders then.
Well, the home builders who do have that entry-level supply are doing the most in sales right now. We do see strength in Toll Brothers, which is the luxury home builder, but that's only because they're not really reliant on those mortgage-dependent buyers. But home builders like KB Home, D.R. Horton, who have that Express brand, that real entry-level brand, they're still seeing a lot of demand. But We should also note that the home builders don't necessarily have to worry about that 9-month supply we're talking about. People think, oh my God, are the home builders in a glut of homes? And that's because just 20% of that supply has actually been built yet. That's how they measure that supply. It can be houses that have been permitted. It can be houses under construction, or
that's a really important note, because you'll hear a lot of crash bros talk about, oh, they've got all this supply, shadow inventory. All these homes exist, but you can't buy them because they're not releasing them. The metric of potential new home builds goes by, permitted homes being built, but it's not actually homes available for purchase. That's a good thing. And I'm glad that she brought that up, because you got to keep that in mind.
or houses that are finished. So the home builders have a lot of control over what they finish, when, and what they even start, depending on that supply situation. But once again, probably that entry-level builder is going to be the best bet.
So if interest rates were to come down, are there a lot of people that want to sell their existing homes if they get the chance, or not?
I certainly think there's a lot of pent-up seller demand. There are, aging baby boomers in big homes who would like to downsize, but they're thinking, why do I want to get rid of my 3% rate and trade up to a 7% rate, especially when the market is this pricey? But they're also lured by the fact that, hey, the market's pricey and I can sell my home for a lot. So if rates come back into that 6% range, that's where we saw last fall and into the winter that people did start to move. Sellers started to say, okay, I'm going to go, because that 6% range is a little less, shall we say, unsavory than the 7% range.
That's a great analysis. She's hit the nail right on the head. She's exactly right, describing the lock-in effect once again, and how, those certain group of home buyers view the lock-in effect. And again, just rates coming down just a little bit, as she's put, it's a little less unsavory. It's a little bit more palatable for those people to ditch their mortgage rates of 3.5%, and maybe adjust to a 6% rate.
Resemble that remark. Aging baby boomers. I might sue you for definition.
We're all aging, Joe. Even babies are aging. Okay.
Definition.
So, really, really interesting article. 2 interesting videos. Obviously, there's a lot happening in the housing market, and it's uncertain where it's going to go. Although signs seem to point towards potentially slightly lower interest rates. And they also kind of are pointing towards prices to continue to be resilient and perhaps going up. So only time will tell. Nobody has a crystal ball, which is another phrase that I'm getting sick of, but it does remain true. And we'll just have to see what happens. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the stream today. If you did like this content, please drop a like below on this video. Also consider subscribing to the channel. I stream once a week. Usually I stream Wednesdays, but going out of town tomorrow, so I decided to stream on Tuesday. I won't be with you for the next 2 weeks. I will be out of town celebrating my 10-year wedding anniversary. So I won't be online, but I'll see you guys when I return. As always, I hope you enjoyed the stream. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you again really soon.